Hi everybody, it's Jamie. I am from Louisiana. I am 31 years old. I am not what is usually thought of when you think of a Southern belle. Southern belles are beautiful, prim and proper. I'm disabled and got a mouth on me that would make even a sailor blush. I am in the part of Louisiana known as Cajun country, and I am a raging Cajun through and through. I have had a lot of struggles in life, but here I am still fighting. Yes, I have had bad days where the pain is almost unbearable, but with the grace of God, the love of my family, friends, my fiance and his family, and my pets, I am still here. I guess you could say all my problems started in utero, although that is mom's burden. First off, her having a miscarriage a few months before becoming pregnant with me, and then her being put on bed rest 5 months pregnant, and she had a lot of personal medical problems that I am not going to share without her permission. Anyway, there was an emergency one night in her 7th month, and she had to be rushed to the hospital. And we had an emergency C-section, and by 10:36 a.m. on May 5th, 1991, I made my grand entrance into the world at 3 pounds 6 ounces and only 16 inches in height. Basically, I looked like a human baby doll. Shortly after birth, I was diagnosed with a connective tissue disorder that they thought was Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. However, I would later find out I was misdiagnosed. I spent my entire first month naked, helpless in the NICU. Mom and Dad went home without me while I stayed in the hospital with the doctors who wanted me to get stronger and healthier. Mom and Dad came visit me every day while I was in NICU. In my 2nd month, I went home, but only for 2 weeks, as I had started to not keep food down, throwing it back up, and ended up being diagnosed with pyloric stenosis, which is a condition in which the opening between the stomach and small intestine thickens. It occurs most often in babies under 6 months. In this condition, the pylorus muscles block food from entering the small intestine, and it most often happens in males. Oh look, I'm already a medical anomaly. I had an emergency surgery that would prove my stomach issues would not get better. Meaning that I still had stomach problems, just not that particular one. One of my grandma's favorite memories, which my grandma is no longer alive, God rest her soul, but her favorite memory was I was a baby and my arms were too weak to hold my bottle, so I would hold them with my feet. And my grandpa, who I called Poppy, he saw that and he said, "She's gonna be just fine in life." So, yeah, that was one of my grandma's favorite stories. In fact, that's how she would introduce me to everybody we met. "This is my youngest granddaughter." Da, 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 da. It's like, okay, Mommy, you're embarrassing me. But now that she's gone, I wouldn't give to hear that story one more time. Irony. Anyway. Sometime during infancy, we ended up changing pediatricians after an incident where the dude was a total jerkwad. I was laying on the table, cooing and just being a baby, and Mom asked him what he saw or some question like that, and he goes, "You can just look at her and see she isn't normal." After that appointment, Mom called Dad and said we are switching pediatricians immediately. She always has been my biggest advocate. She felt this is her normal. No one is the same. Everyone has their own normal. Everyone was made differently, whether it be race, disabled, or special needs, or not disabled, nationality, speech, religion, morals, values, and beliefs. This is her normal. She has passed that hatred of the word normal onto me, and I think it should be erased from vocabulary. Fast forward to 6 or 8 months of age, my mom and my in-home physical therapist noticed my spine looking like it was starting to curve. Scoliosis. Mom took me to the pediatrician, and I was now seeing, and he referred me to an orthopedic in New Orleans. The orthopedic would flip-flop between surgery immediately or surgery after start walking. Every time we went, the answer was always different. Fast forward to when I was about 1 or so, we were on our way to New Orleans for an appointment, and Dad got stopped by a state trooper for speeding. The state trooper happened to be a member of the Shriners organization, which is an organization that has nonprofit hospitals for children. It's a great organization. Anyway, he asks, "What's the hurry, sir?" And Dad explains how I have scoliosis, we're on our way to New Orleans for an appointment, and we left a little late. The trooper looks in the back, sees me with my scoliosis back, and hands Dad a card for Shriners Hospital for children, in case we ever want a second opinion. And lets Dad go with just a warning. No ticket. That's the only time Dad has ever gotten out of a speeding ticket, and it was because of me. Oh God, that was obnoxious. After another appointment with Dr. Flippity Flop, as I call him. Hang on, my computer's being stupid. Okay. After another appointment with Dr. Flippity Flop, Mom decides to seek a second opinion with Shriners. She gives them a call. The Shriners come out to evaluate me, do all the intake, registration stuff, like measuring the curve of my spine, stuff like that. I ended up getting a surgery at 2 years old through Shriners in Shreveport. And I continued to see them until I was 17. For the surgery, they took a rib from my side, which I don't remember which side, and I sure as heck am not going to lift my shirt on camera to show y'all the scar, to fuse my spine. And supposedly, as my spine would grow, it'd correct itself. Well, as usual, my body did not cooperate. Apparently, my spine did not get the memo because it did not grow. It stayed where they fused it. My legs and arms grew, but my torso did not. In fact, my spine decided to curve another way, giving me two curves now, which became kyphosis instead of scoliosis. Kyphosis is multiple curves and causes hunching over, hunchback. Yeah, it's like Hunchback of Notre Dame, but I think he had more problems going on with him. And I actually got bullied and called that. Yeah, that was not fun. Anyway, after surgery, I had to wear a cast for a little while. That was hot and itchy, and I could not take it off. The only way I could get relief, Dad would take the nozzle of a vacuum, stick it in the cast, and blow air to relieve the itching, which I giggled and enjoyed. I'm a weird child, but that's besides the point. And then after the cast, I had to wear a back brace that I could only take off for bath time and after eating, only because my tummy often hurt after I ate. Yeah. My back brace, there's a few funny stories. One, my mom came up with this fun little game. The back brace had straps in the back. She would pick me up by the straps and carry me sideways like a suitcase. And I just thought that was fun. I'd always beg her to do that. I'd be like, "Let's play the suitcase game." Yeah. But another funny incident with my back brace. When I was about 3 or 4, I learned how to escape out of it. And my back brace I called my body jacket. Mom would put me to bed in it, and in the morning, she'd come in to wake me up, and I was magically out of the brace. She couldn't figure it out. Then one day, we're going somewhere. I'm asleep in the car seat, and she swears by the story to this day. I sit up, still asleep, reach my arms behind my back, undo the Velcro straps of my brace, and then tuck my arms in and push it off of me in my sleep. Yeah. I don't know how she managed to keep me in the back brace after that. Personally, I would have put a padlock. Although some people might think that's child abuse. Anyway, I was in early intervention preschool as that was the only option for preschool back in those days. That was my first exposure to other disabled and special needs individuals. They kept me for 2 years, ages 3 and 4, and wanted to keep me an extra year, but Mom and Dad said no, she's 5, she's starting kindergarten on time. And I was in mainstream classes after that, except for adapted PE 2 to 3 times a week with the other special needs and disabled kids. On other days, I did go to regular PE, and in elementary school, they always found something for me to do, even if that meant walking the track, or in my case, start walking the track, get distracted by a butterfly or wildflowers, start picking wildflowers instead of doing what I'm supposed to do, until the PE coach is like, Jamie, you're supposed to be walking. Yeah. And then I'd resume walking, probably with wildflowers in my hair. Yeah, that was me as a kid. But in junior high and high school, they didn't make me do PE on the days I didn't have adapted PE. They were too worried about liability and injury, so they just told me to sit on the bench. And the other special ed class I had was resource, which is kind of like tutoring, I guess, except they pull me for an hour out of class to work on subjects I'm struggling with or work ahead so I have more exposure. Or if I wasn't struggling with a class, to work on problem solving skills or doing puzzles, or it was different stuff. And then once a month they would take me an hour out for physical therapy and occupational therapy, or they would do it in the back of the class. It just depended on who my therapist was. I had a semi-regular childhood. I tried t-ball but quit halfway through when my back would hurt from the fact I can't run well, and when I did run, it would send shockwaves up my spine. That and the heat. It's too hot. I was also in Girl Scouts until 4th grade, and one of the top cookie sellers, thank you very much. But that's not very hard when you're a social butterfly and know most of your town. But we had to quit because Mom was troop leader and she started working full-time. I was also very involved in church. In 2nd grade, I decided to join the church choir. Why? Since I can't sing worth a crud, but I had fun anyway and made lots of friends. I attended a Bible study thing on Friday nights at a different church denomination. It was called Awana, and we would sing songs, play games, and do Bible study verses. And I also made a lot of friends there. I did that from preschool until 6th grade, and then I decided I wanted to go to the skating rink every weekend. In 3rd grade, I had love, which, what does a kid know about love and stealing someone's heart? Yeah, that lasted till 5th grade when he decided to break up with me at church in choir practice. Yeah, that's not a good memory. He could have at least waited till the end of choir practice, not at the beginning, because I ended up locking myself in the bathroom crying my eyes out, missing the entire church choir practice. But I forgive him. He had a lot going on during that time, so I hold no resentment to him. In 4th grade, I had started not really trying my hardest in school anymore. And it was all because the summer prior, I had been warned about state testing. It can hold you back if you don't pass the state test, even if you have good grades on your report cards. So I counted myself out before I even took the dang test. I was all, well, what's the point of trying? I know I'm not going to pass the test. I just know it. So I started doing the bare minimum, and yes, I did pass the test in each grade level by the skin of my teeth. Until 11th grade, that changed all that. In junior high, I became an altar server for a few years until one incident where I almost fell while working on the altar because my stability was getting worse. Even though I didn't want to give it up, Mom and Dad both advised it. Also in junior high, me and several of my friends joined our church's youth group until we graduated high school. Those were some great memories, especially going to the retreats. We also became readers, lectors for church mass. After my friends roped me into it, I have dreaded stage fright and still do to this day sometimes. It takes a lot for me to face a crowd. I've always had a hard time with math. Me and math just don't mix. Well, in 11th grade, I had to take an Algebra 2 class, and I struggled in the beginning. But thanks to Dad's brilliant idea using my resource class to work ahead of the algebra class, get the assignments early so I could become more familiar and practice before the actual tests, I was able to turn it all around and get all my quality points I needed. Great, right? Well, Jamie, who's Miss Social Butterfly and loves to plan parties, and her birthday happens to fall the last 6 weeks of school, so instead of focusing and doing what I needed to do, what am I doing? Planning a birthday party that I didn't even get to do because I got an F the last 6 weeks of school and failed the class. After all that hard work to turn it all around, I fucked it up. But it was a learning experience. My teachers and principal could have just passed me by committee, but no, they said I needed to learn this lesson. They didn't make me go to summer school either. They had me repeat that Algebra 2 class the following year, my senior year. But my principal warned me, you can bet I'll be watching your grades. So now that I had someone in the school actually watching my stuff and making sure I didn't get off task, I got serious. I set timers for my breaks while doing homework. I did less social media, less party planning, and I ended up with a GPA of over 3.0, something I had stopped getting since 4th grade. It also helped prepare me for college, so it was definitely a lesson I needed to learn. I graduated with my class on time in 2009 and started college the following fall. I stopped seeing Shriners Hospital in Shreveport at 17 years old with the final decision of nothing else can be done without paralyzing her. They discharged me because the next time they saw me, I'd be over 18, and Shriners stopped seeing patients at 18. However, they did not recommend any adult orthopedic to follow my case when they discharged me. So I went 2 years with no orthopedic following my case and possibly my back continuing to get worse. In August 2010, Mom's worried that no one's following my case, and we had heard great things about a local orthopedist in our town. So we make an appointment, we go to him, he does an x-ray. He looks at the x-ray and says, "This looks like a roller coaster." Meanwhile, I just reply, "Try living with it, dude." He goes, "This is above my expertise. If this was my child, this is who I'd go to," and suggested 2 doctors. One in St. Louis, Missouri, who is now in New York, and one in New York. The one in St. Louis was not only closer, but was also president of the Scoliosis Foundation, a medical professor at WashU Medical School. He had also patented some of the instrumentation used in surgeries and handled complicated cases like mine. So we chose St. Louis not only because it's closer, but because this particular doctor has all these things, and the one in New York, we didn't have as much info on him. So our local orthopedist sends a referral, and I get in within 6 months, which usually referrals take almost a year to get answered. So that was a blessing. January 2011, I had the consultation appointment in St. Louis. Just based on an x-ray, the doctor said, yes, I can definitely do a surgery. And the way he explained it is, all surgeries have risks. And yes, I could become paralyzed by the surgery. But if I didn't get treatment, my spine would keep curving until it eventually collapsed, and I might end up paralyzed in a wheelchair anyway, but with more health problems. So, this is how I look at it. Paralyzed with surgery and lesser health problems, paralyzed with more health problems and possible life-threatening. So, yeah. Surgery 1. Meanwhile, Dad thought that it was originally for vanity reasons. Like, come on, Dad. How long you been knowing me? I'm 20. You've been having me 20 years. When do I care about vanity? In fact, he didn't even realize how bad my back was until he saw the model of my spine right before surgery. And he goes, "Holy crap, that was in my child?" Yeah, so he learned something that day. Anyway, since we've been told I couldn't have surgery without paralyzing me, and now this doctor said I could have a surgery, Mom and I were filled with hope again, and we went to the bathroom to change me out of the hospital gown and stuff back into my regular clothes, and we cried our eyes out like two big babies. In December 2011, which was supposed to be my pre-op trip, that was a little less sugary sweet. That was a long 12-hour day. First was MRI with a radiologist who had 0 patience and was kind of a prick. Keep still, quit moving. It's like, dude, I got a huge ass curve in my back, and you expect me to lay still for an hour on a hard metal table without any type of medication to help ease this back pain? Are you nuts? Eventually it gets done. Next was getting blood work. Yeah, that was fun dealing with the radiologist a-hole, and now I become a human pincushion. Which my veins gave them trouble, and after several sticks, they eventually got it. My vein kept rolling away from the needle, and they were determined to use that vein for some reason, which it ended up with a huge-ass bruise afterwards. Then I had to do what's called a pulmonary function test to test my lung capacity. Turns out my lungs were being crushed by my spine, and my lungs were only functioning at 18 to 20%. Yeah, that explains why I was always out of breath. Then we did x-rays and 3D x-rays. Finally, hours later, after a 12-hour day, we see the doctor when I'm already tired, irritable, hungry, and ready to strangle someone. Finally, we see him, and turns out my ribs were wrapped around my spine. So he'd have to break ribs just to get to my spine to correct the scoliosis. And this was risky, given how low my pulmonary was. So he's a little more hesitant. So he's like, okay, we'll move up your traction date, halo traction, which is supposed to stretch you out. They put a halo, and then the halo has a strap, and the strap attaches to a walker with a pulley device, and it has weighted sandbag things at the end. And the more weighted bags, the more it stretches you. I have a slideshows of my halo experience if y'all want to check that out. Anyway, so he says we're going to move up the halo traction date, and he tells me straight up, you could be in traction up to a year and still not be able to have surgery. So I was a little depressed that night. The next day, we had what's called a familiarity visit at the Shriners of St. Louis, where I'd be doing my halo traction. Even though I was over 18, this particular one still saw some patients over 18. Anyway, I meet the doctor's care coordinator, who would be the person I talked to if I had any needs while in halo traction. I was depressed as I would be doing this mostly by myself. Mom wouldn't be there the entire time, as we had pets back home that needed to be taken care of, and she still cleaned houses part-time as a job. She would come up on weekends and sometimes bring visitors with her. Anyway, the care coordinator was very optimistic. Don't worry, we'll get your pulmonary numbers up and you'll have that surgery. And I was like, yeah, okay, the doctor doesn't seem to think so, but okay. Anyway, I got excited when I saw the rec room, as it was huge. Now it's small because they moved locations, which I don't really like because I spent 7.5 months in Halo Traction. I got to know those halls very well, and it's just not the same hospital that I got to know so well. So, I don't do well with change. In January 2012, I began my long Halo Traction journey by myself in St. Louis. The first few weeks, I was so bad, trying to escape out of it as often as I could. Yeah. I couldn't escape the halo itself because it's fused into your head, but I would unhook myself from the walker very often and got lectured a lot. I was also on medicine the first few weeks because I had headaches from the placement. And pain medicine, when you don't have a filter already, not a good mix. Anyway, the care coordinator one day had been looking for me. I had just finished a session with the psychologist, and we decided to go downstairs to lunch in the cafeteria together. And I had a green bracelet because I was over 18, so I didn't have to tell the nurses. I could just come and go as I pleased. Anyway, so the care coordinator's upstairs looking for me, and finally she comes downstairs, finds me in the cafeteria, and she goes, I've been looking all over for you. And I decided to play along like I knew, and I said, I've been hiding from you. Another funny incident is I was doing my respiratory breathing exercises, and the director of the respiratory department is watching me, and she's this little Colombian lady, so she's got an accent, and I'm still on the medicine, so I don't have a filter and say whatever I think. Later that night, one of the ladies that work under her comes in, and I said, oh, thank God it's not the director of the respiratory department. She's like Hitler of the respiratory department. Well, this particular worker goes back and tells the director what I said. The next morning, I wake up, and the director is at the foot of my bed just smiling. And she goes, you think I'm Hitler? And I'm just like, oh shit, I'm in trouble. Yeah, she was my respiratory person the rest of the week. Yeah, that was kind of a foot and mouth moment. But we're friends now, and it's kind of an inside joke. I nearly flipped my traction equipment several times just by leaning to one side and the weights swing, and yeah, that was not fun. It scared the nurses quite a few times. Scared me too. I had to help with the familiarity visits with other halos quite often, and I also had to talk at the conference. I spent 7.5 months at Shriners Hospital in Halo Traction, and even celebrated my 21st birthday while in Traction. My family took me out on an overnight pass. I had a chocolate martini, and Dad ended up having to help me walk. I was already thrown off balance with the Halo Traction, and it wasn't the martini itself that did me in. It was the piece of Godiva chocolate at the bottom that I decided to leave in the martini until I finished drinking, and then the minute I ate that chocolate soaked up the alcohol, that did me in, and I could not walk. Dad had to keep me from falling over. Yeah, I still had fun that night though. So the next day we went to the butterfly house, and Mom, even though we don't have a picture of it, says a butterfly landed on my halo. So yeah, I still had a pretty good birthday even though I was in the hospital. Fast forward to August 16, 2012. I had my first phase of the surgery. It took over 12 hours, and he broke 10 ribs, and I'm pretty sure there's only 12 in the human body. So yeah, a lot of shallow breathing. I pulled out my breathing tube while sedated, ended up developing pneumonia, and ended up with a trach. That's what this scar is right here. Which, with the trach, if we didn't have the cap tightened on it, if I breathed or coughed hard, the cap would fly across the hospital room, and poor Mom had to chase it down. While I was in the hospital, they also found out I had a heart condition called Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome, which is an access pathway in the chambers of my heart, which my shirt's trying to fall, that causes fast heart rate and tachycardia, which I had an ablation in 2013 after I came home, which an ablation burns off the pathway, so it's no longer accessible. Even though I still have some tachycardia, even after the ablation. While in the hospital, there were lots of interesting episodes. I'll begin by saying medication and a lot of TV do not mix, or maybe they do, depending on your view of this situation. I had a lot of interesting dreams that ranged from Dr. Linky, which was my surgeon, was a spider, but he's a good spider, or Dr. Linky helped put Humpty Dumpty back together again, or I helped save Atlantis from drowning. Yeah. Poor Mom never knew what was going to come out of my mouth when she got to my hospital bed. Another thing was the time I thought I was dying. When Dad was in the hospital room, first thing he always looked at was my oxygen numbers. Well, one day they unplugged my pulse ox to turn me over or something, so I wouldn't get tangled up in it, and I didn't realize. So I'm looking at my pulse ox, and there's a question mark next to my O2. And Dad had got me in the habit of looking at my oxygen numbers. So when I saw that question mark next to my O2, I thought I wasn't breathing. Yeah, and I had the trach at the time, but it wasn't capped. So when I would try to talk, all that would come out was air. So I had a notepad when I couldn't talk. So I wrote down, I'm dying. And this was right after I got over the pneumonia. And Mom's like, you're dying? The pneumonia's clearing up. What are you talking about? So she sees me look, my eyes dart to the pulse ox, and she sees the question mark near the O2, and she's like, oh no, it's unplugged, look. She holds up the wire. So yeah, that was one interesting episode. Another interesting thing was the whole, I want to lay in the bed like a normal person meltdown. Yeah, that was right after I had gotten back from therapy. They had moved my bed to help me get my walker out or something. And, so they put me back in bed after therapy, and they adjust me so that I'm straight in the bed. Well, the only way I could tell if I was straight or not is I would look up at the ceiling, and if tiles were straight, I was straight. That was the only way I could tell. So they adjust me. Are you straight? No. Okay, adjust me a little more. How about now? No. Try again. One more time. How about now? And that's when the whole, I want to lay in a bed like a normal person frustration starts. And the poor therapist is just looking at Mom like, help. And so Mom is trying to calm me down. She's like, Jamie, we'll get this. Calm down. Breathe. So she sees me looking at the ceiling, and she notices that they're not lined up the way I'm laying. And so she starts laughing. She figures it out. She's like, no, Jamie, this is the bed that's not straight. So they adjust the bed to be straight the way it normally is. And they say, better now? And I go, yes. And the last interesting episode was they had taken me to walk around the gift shop area. And we're looking in the fish tank, and I see two fish. One's chasing the other around the tank. Well, I'm on meds, and I say whatever comes to my mind. And I say, I bet that one's male and he's trying to rape the female. And the therapist is right there, and he's like, Jamie, this is a children's hospital. You can't say that. And just like freaking out. So we get back to my room, and I had this gel pillow that is a handful like this. And I don't remember what I had that for. I think it was after I got my pressure sore. Anyway, he's holding it. He said, doesn't this look like a boob implant? And I'm just looking at him, and I said, you just lectured me about the whole fish tank thing, and now you're talking about boob implants? And he goes, the difference was that was out in public where a child could hear. This is in your room, and you're overage. I was like, still, you're being a hypocrite. Yeah. Anyway, on September 20th, well, one more. This is after the September 20th surgery, so I can save that story. Anyway, September 20th, I had my second phase of surgery, and that was about 8 hours or less. I ended up with a pressure sore on my back because they didn't turn me frequently enough. One incident after that surgery, it was closer to when I was going to get discharged to come home. My doctor always did his rounds in the morning to check on his patients. Well, one morning he's running late, so he's rushing. He comes in, and the way he would turn me is there was a sheet under me, and he'd use it to slowly get me to flip over onto my stomach so he could look at my back or whatever. Well, he's rushing this morning, so he just yanks the sheet, and I flip. It didn't hurt me or anything. It's just like, that's not normal. That's not usual. So I'm in shock, and he leaves. And I look at Mom, and I said, I feel like a pancake. He just flipped me. And she just laughs. And anyway, I come home October 10th, just in time for Halloween. And I came up with a new idea for my old Twinkle Fairy costume. I went out in my wheelchair in a neck brace, and I said, Twinkle Fairy got smashed by a car. Anyway, I still had the pressure sore to deal with. I still had the trach, and still had the Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome and tachycardia issues. So when I came home, I had to go to my GP to get sent to wound care, get a pulmonologist to monitor me about the trach. The pulmonologist ended up having me do a sleep study, so I have a sleep doctor now, and I sleep with a BiPAP because I had symptoms of sleep apnea. And then I also had a cardiovascular doctor who ended up sending me to a specialist who did the surgery, the ablation for the Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome. It was like he was called an electrocardiovascular doctor. I think that was his specialty. Anyway, the pulmonologist, I said about the sleep study already. Wound care eventually got the pressure sore cleared up. In fall 2013, I resumed my college and graduated at the end of the semester with my associates in general studies. In spring 2014, I moved out on my own for the first time into an apartment and went to a bigger college campus to pursue my bachelor's degree. I also got my first boyfriend at this time, who's now my ex, but it was a mutual decision and we are still really good friends. I got so high on independence and freedom, and also the fact I can't do math to save my life, and the tutoring center really didn't help me, that my required GPA for my Louisiana rehab vocational funding that paid for my college dropped, and I lost my funding. I'd have to pay for college with the Pell Grant and out of pocket. I did not want to have the debt of student loans at that time, so I moved back home with my parents and went back to the 2-year community college. In 2016, one night, I woke up in agonizing pain. I had what looked like a huge boil on my back. It popped and then that started a 2-year wound with a 2-year battle with a wound that refused to cooperate and go away. It turns out I had a broken rod that was serious that no one knew about. Once it was discovered, it was like only a little ways from poking out of my skin. Anyway, after the boil popped, I had a wound that would almost close up, then reopen. We fought that thing for 2 years before wound care finally decided, hey, let's do an x-ray, and they finally discovered the broken rod. In October 2017, I was doing online dating and I met my now fiance. Christmas Eve 2017, he gave me a promise ring. In fall 2018, we moved into an apartment together and I went back to the bigger college campus. In December 2018, he proposed on Christmas Eve. I called a doctor in St. Louis once we discovered the broken rod, and they got me in 2019. I had surgery August 14, 2019 to fix the rods back in St. Louis. When they did the revision surgery, they discovered I had an infection in the rods. And I was referred to the infections department and was put on antibiotics indefinitely, even once the infection cleared up, so we wouldn't have a relapse of infection. I only stayed in the hospital a few weeks that time. In January 2020, my mom was going ride on the truck with Dad, and they needed someone to take care of the house. So me and my fiance moved in, and he eventually, because he couldn't get a job, moved back home to his parents, which ended up being a good thing because he found a job out there. And he is currently working hard to try to save up money and build a life for us together. In 2021, my pain got worse after surgery, but I also thought maybe it was what I thought was Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, because that affects the joints due to lack of collagen. So I decided to seek a geneticist to find out more about the Ehlers-Danlos that I had been diagnosed with and what type I might have. So we did the genetics work, the labs, all that medical mumbo jumbo. And turns out they misdiagnosed me at birth. I did not have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I had another connective tissue disorder known as Marfan syndrome. And no, I did not say Martian, although I do sometimes feel like an alien. It's Marfan, M-A-R-F-A-N syndrome, which is an inherited disorder that also affects connective tissue. Marfan syndrome affects the heart, eyes, blood vessels, and bones. People with Marfan syndrome are tall. I'm not tall, but they think that might be because of my scoliosis. And thin, I'm relatively thin, except it doesn't look like it because of my poor posture. Long arms, my arms and legs are long. My fingers and toes are long. Dad calls them my toothpicks. Anyway, in 2022, opportunities have started appearing in the form of public speaking. I follow 2 local programs on Facebook, Guns Down, Power Up, and their founder, Eric Williams, and Bully Box, a passion project, and their founder, Shauna Sias. I was talking with Eric one day as he had posted that he had been in special ed and had mental issues and stuff like that. So I messaged him asking, as a fellow disabled person myself, do you mind telling me what your disabilities and why you were in special ed? And that led to, how about you, me, coming to an event to tell your story, my story, and he can share his story. So I did the event on May 25th, 2022, but I went in my wheelchair because I had hurt my ankle really bad. It ended up being soft tissue swelling. After my talk, I started making flyers for his events and advertising, promoting the events on all my social medias to try and get more people involved. With Bully Box, they have a show on Facebook Live every Wednesday night, or usually every Wednesday night. Every once in a while, they skip a week. And I made a comment on one of their shows, and they messaged me asking me to come on one of their shows as a guest, which I have a video of my segment on the show. And that was in April of 2022. I did a few other events with them also. I also started making stickers and sometimes flyers for their events as well, and I promote them on all my social medias as well. I have no idea why God made me the way I am, and I have no idea what God has for me around the corner. Like, will I ever be a mom? Maybe if only we adopt or foster, as doctors do not recommend me getting pregnant. When will me and my fiance get married? If we ever get married, as SSI has certain roadblocks and can possibly lose benefits if the person gets married. Will my pain ever lessen and get better, or will my body just keep crumbling and getting worse, and my independence being lost year by year, which seems like it, but never know. Will I ever finish college and get my bachelor's degree and accomplish all these dreams and passions I have? I have so many questions and fears, but I gotta do it with fortitude, do it with fear. I gotta take it one day at a time, and if I look too far into the future and start stressing, I spiral and spiral and spiral into an emotional whirlwind volcano that explodes at any time. And that leads to me beating myself down, and that's not good. So I gotta take life one day at a time. Some days will be good, some days will be bad, and some will just be neutral. But it's my life, my journey, my twisted journey. Anyway, that's about me. Peace out.